Darth Nihilus is one of Star Wars Legend's most infamous characters, a fearsome Sith Lord capable of consuming Force energy on a massive scale. Odds are you've heard of him. We've done a video on him before, after all. However, you might not have known that he had an apprentice. That's right, the Lord of Hunger himself, the wound in the Force, took on an apprentice to aid him in his quest to rid the galaxy of life. Why, you might ask? Well, in this video, we'll answer exactly that question as we tell the story of Visas Ma.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Do you feel it is a... You are the darkness in which all life dies, my lord. All life exists to feed your power. And my life is yours.
Visas Ma was a Miraluka, a member of a rare, near-human species. The Miraluka had no eyes, and thus, by human standards, were naturally blind. Despite their lack of eyesight, however, the Miraluka could still see. They saw through the Force, perceiving the currents and patterns of life and using that sense to navigate. As you might expect, the Miraluka were naturally Force sensitive, and Visas, in particular, was quite strong in the Force. Visas lived on Katarr, a beautiful Miraluka colony world in the Mid-Rim. It was a somewhat obscure planet as the Miraluka were rather reclusive, but it wasn't completely cut off from the outside galaxy. In particular, Katarr kept close ties with the Jedi Order, as the Miraluka had an easier time connecting with beings who could also see the universe through the Force. This close bond led the Jedi to choose Katarr as the site of a conclave in 3952 BBY. The conclave came 4 years after the end of the Jedi Civil War, which saw the Order's numbers ravaged by the Sith. To make matters worse, in the years since, the number of Jedi had dwindled further. Some unseen threat was preying on Jedi, attacking them through the Force, and they were unable to determine what it was, aside from some new breed of Sith. One fateful day, nearly all of the surviving Jedi gathered on Katarr to determine the nature of this threat, hoping that being close to Miraluka would enable them to reveal their enemy. The Jedi succeeded, but not in the way they'd hoped. By gathering on Katarr, they had inadvertently drawn Darth Nihilus to them. Visas Ma later recounted that those gathered on Katarr never saw Nihilus's face, but all heard his voice, and when he spoke, Katarr died. The Lord of Hunger stripped the entire planet of the Force, killing not only the assembled Jedi, but also the Miraluka and all other living things on the colony, from sentient beings to microbes. Nihilus consumed the Force energies of every life form on the planet. Every life form save one. Visas Ma survived the attack on Katarr. Nihilus spared her. But what Visas felt while Katarr died all around her seemed a far worse fate than what her people had suffered. As a Miraluka, she saw through the Force, and after Nihilus's attack, she found herself well and truly blind. Everything around her had crumbled to dust, and she was terribly alone, afraid, and in great pain. As Visas lay reeling from the shock of what had just happened, Nihilus himself descended to the ashen surface of Katarr to retrieve her. He took Visas to his ship, the Ravager, a ghost ship dragged from the graveyards of Malachor 5. She awoke aboard the dead ship to find her face mutilated. The skin over the place where her eyes would otherwise have been had been carved away. After awakening, Visas found her way to Nihilus, who was waiting on the bridge. When Visas arrived, Nihilus showed her a vision through the Force, allowing her to see as ordinary beings saw.
He made me see. And for the first time, I saw the galaxy. And I wished to die. To this galaxy, my world, absent the currents and spectrums of the Force, was nothing but crude matter, rock, flesh, emptiness. He showed the flickering of life on other planets. The mass of beings that swarm through the empty places of the galaxy. to see such creatures, disconnected from themselves, their world, their place in it, unable to see the currents and how they affected everything around them. He showed me to make me believe in his cause. He convinced.
The vision Nihilus showed Visas severely damaged her ability to see through the Force, and it also made her into a willing ally. The Lord of Hunger showed Visas how disconnected and chaotic other beings were, the wretchedness and waste that was life. In doing so, he convinced her that it all deserved to die. He would purge it all, turn chaos into order, and replace the meaningless cacophony with an endless, perfect silence. Nihilus invited Visas to aid him in this cause, and Visas accepted, becoming his Sith apprentice. Nihilus gave Visas a meditation chamber aboard the Ravager, a great room where, when she was focused in the Force, she could hear the voices of the dead Katarr. She searched through the Force, looking for oddities and Jedi for Nihilus to feed upon. When she found something, Nihilus would dispatch her to hunt it down and bring it back to him. To this end, he trained Visas in the use of a lightsaber and several powerful Force techniques. She put these to good use. None survived an encounter with Visas Ma until one fateful day. A year after the death of Katarr, Visas felt something new in the Force, an echo, a wound, which carried pain similar to what she had felt at Katarr. Nihilus sent her to track down this oddity and bring it back to him, and Visas obeyed, partly out of loyalty and partly curiosity. She soon discovered the source of the wound. It stemmed from Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile, who had returned to known space after a decade beyond the edge of the Republic. Visas snuck aboard Surik's ship, the Ebon Hawk, and confronted the exile when she returned from an adventure on Nar Shaddaa. Visas and Surik fought a fierce but brief lightsaber duel, which ended with the exile victorious. Visas was wounded and her lightsaber was destroyed. She begged Surik to kill her, but the exile refused. Visas lapsed into unconsciousness. With the help of the Ebon Hawk's crew, Visas recovered from her wounds. When she awoke, she pledged herself to the exile's service in gratitude for sparing her life. Surik accepted Visas and forgave her for the earlier attack, an act of kindness Visas was not expecting. She had not seen kindness in a long time, and she had forgotten the power of compassion. Visas promised to protect the exile, but warned Surik that she would eventually have to face Nihilus. Visas hoped that Surik would be strong enough to defeat the Lord of Hunger, but she still feared for Surik's safety and repeatedly warned her that Nihilus was not to be taken lightly. He was so powerful, Visas claimed, that he could not even be considered a man anymore, only a being of raw power. Many of Surik's companions were uneasy about having a Sith assassin aboard the Ebon Hawk, but Kreia, Surik's mentor, advised that Visas represented an opportunity. Kreia sensed that Visas was in some way linked to Nihilus as a result of his sparing her. She advised Surik that this could be exploited, urging the exile to manipulate Visas into killing herself when the time came to confront Nihilus, insisting that it could help defeat the Lord of Hunger. But Surik rejected this idea, instead choosing to train Visas along with several of her other companions in the ways of the Jedi. Visas Ma accompanied Mitra Surik on her journeys across the galaxy. Along the way, Visas unlearned many of the Sith techniques Nihilus had taught her, instead studying the ways of a Jedi Sentinel. Surik repaired her lightsaber and returned it to her, and Visas proved an asset to the crew. As she traveled across the galaxy, Surik only grew stronger, and Visas became increasingly hopeful that the exile could indeed defeat Darth Nihilus. Still, she continued to fear that Surik would still be unable to overcome her former master, and dreaded how the encounter would scar the exile. At the same time, Visas found comfort in Surik's company. After her battle with the exile, Visas' foresight had begun to return, and she saw Surik for what she really was, someone deeply wounded but also strongly connected to life around her. In Mitra Surik, Visas saw proof that, perhaps, Nihilus had been wrong about the universe. What's more, Visas saw some of herself in Surik. She saw that she was not the only one in the galaxy who had been wounded, and that the revelation that she was not alone gave her a newfound sense of hope and purpose. Surik saw this, and she and Visas worked through each other's wounds, with each finding healing through the other. With Surik's help, Visas started to overcome the pain she had carried since Katarr. As Visas foresaw, the time eventually came for Surik to confront the Lord of Hunger. When Nihilus attacked Telos 4, seeking to cleanse it of life, Surik and the crew of the Ebon Hawk rushed to the planet's aid. While the Republic Navy held off the Ravager and Nihilus's other ships, Surik, Visas, and a team of Mandalorians boarded the Sith Lord's flagship, planning to plant bombs across the vessel, defeat Nihilus, and then blow the ship to hell. As they made their way through the Ravager, the team came by chance to Visas' old meditation chamber. She took the opportunity to use it, to hear the voices of Katarr one last time.
Past the surface there is the Force. Where once there was a world that was strong in the Force, now there is a barren wasteland.
It's okay. It's gonna be fine.
It has taken time for me to return here. I lost my way, but I've been stronger for the journey.
It's okay. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna stop worrying.
What happens now shall not be done out of hate or revenge, but for the sake of all life. And I ask you finally to forgive me. This body is a prison no longer.
With the help of the exile, Visas Ma came to terms with the death of her homeworld, vanquishing the pain she had been carrying within her. Now healed, Visas led Surik and Mandalore the Preserver to the Ravager's bridge, where Darth Nihilus awaited. When Nihilus learned that Visas had betrayed him for the exile, he was livid and threatened to destroy his former apprentice. But Surik offered herself up, suggesting that Nihilus could feed upon her instead of Visas. Nihilus tried, but upon feeling the wound in the Force within Surik, he recoiled, shaken by the experience. With Nihilus stunned, Surik, Visas, and Mandalore took the opportunity to attack the Sith Lord. Even weakened, however, Nihilus's power still seemed overwhelming. He was an entity of raw, unfathomable power, so much greater than any mortal man, and for a moment, Visas lost all hope of defeating him. She offered to kill herself to weaken Nihilus, knowing she had a link with the Sith Lord that could be exploited, but Surik instead suggested she try to draw the bond herself. Visas did so, and managed to temporarily cut Nihilus off from the Force. She, together with Surik and Mandalore, then slew the Lord of Hunger. After Nihilus's death, Visas lingered for a moment by his body, even as Surik and Mandalore turned to leave. Wishing to see her former master for what he truly was, Visas removed his mask and looked upon what remained of the force of nature she had once feared. When Surik asked what she had seen behind Nihilus's mask, Visas said only that she had seen a man, nothing more. Visas Ma went on to accompany Surik to Malachor 5, where the exile had her own wounds to tend to. After Malachor, Visas and Surik parted ways. Surik left for the unknown regions, while Visas and the others stayed behind to rebuild the Jedi Order. Visas went on to become a great Jedi Sentinel, and one day, long after she parted ways with Surik, she returned to the ashen surface of Katarr, and there at last found peace. Visas Ma is easily one of the best characters in the Star Wars expanded universe, which really is par for the course for characters from Knights of the Old Republic 2. But what do you think? Would you like to see videos on Visas' fellow lost Jedi? Free to post your thoughts in the comments section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.